Good morning, everybody. I'm about to switch my screen over to the PowerPoint that we were looking at last week. Let's see, I believe that we ended the training last week talking about the title field. And what I am doing is I'm reviewing all the fields that are necessary parts of a bib record, specifically if you're creating a new one because you have not been able to find one to import or to use. So having wound up the discussion of the 245 field, I'm going to move on to the edition part of the bib record. And if you have questions about what we did last time or need some refreshing on what we talked about last time, we can tackle that at the end of this presentation. Okay, so bear with me while I figure all this out. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so in a bib record, you'll find, well, okay, we're talking about original cataloging, so you're not going to find anything, but the information regarding the edition of a particular work is going to be entered in the bib record in a 250 field. An edition statement is given in the form of words and or numbers that distinguish a particular edition or version or revision or issue of a work from a previously existing one. If an edition statement is found with the title information or on the verso or cover of a book, it should be recorded in the 250 field. And this field does not use indicators. So types of things that would constitute an edition statement would be if somewhere on your title page or verso, it may say first edition or second edition, something along those lines. Most commonly in an audio book, you're going to see if something is an abridged or an unabridged version. You can also note the fact that a book might be a large print edition in the edition statement. And then often, particularly in video recordings, you might see an edition statement that may say anniversary edition or director's cut, something like that. So that goes in the 250 field, and I don't have an example to show you, but it's very straightforward. Okay, now the next required field in the bib record would be the publisher information. This is entered in the 264 field. Publisher details are normally pretty easy to identify, although they can become more complicated if you're dealing with an item such as video or a sound recording that has been released numerous times or in different packages. I think that for original cataloging, the best approach in Minerva or MILS would be to try and keep this as simple as possible. And it should be sufficient if you can identify the most recent publication and or copyright date, or possibly the date of the original publication, and then a secondary date that identifies when that material was re-released or what have you. So in the 264 field, the publisher's location is entered first, followed by the publisher's name in a subfield B, and the date of the publication in subfield C. Again, your sources for this information are the title page or the verso. If you're dealing with non-print material, you may have to check the cover or the label or the container for this information. Now you see in the first example of a publisher statement, you've got the city, state, or country. In this case, New York is enough of an identification that you don't need to say New York City or New York, etc. After the name of the location, there is a space, then a colon. Then you have your delimiter subfield B with the name of the publisher, no space with a comma, and then subfield C, you put in the year of publication. Indicators are used for the 264 field. The first indicator is blank, but the second indicator, normally the most frequent uses you're going to see would be either indicator 1 for a publication date, or indicator number 2 would be 4 for a copyright date. If you want further information, you can check all the documentation that we have available and see what the other indicators might be used for. Now, sometimes if you're dealing with an item that is a little bit oddball, not mainstream, you may not be able to find the location of the publisher. And if that's the case, you can enter this phrase in the first part of the field in brackets, place of publication not identified. Now, it is possible that you may be convinced that you do know where the publisher is located. For example, say there's a company named Independent Publishing. You happen to know that it is located in Augusta, or maybe you've done a little bit of research and you know Augusta, Maine is where they're located. You can put that information in brackets at the beginning of the field. Let's see. Now, the place that you provide as place of publication, it has to match the location that you've given in both the fixed fields of the bib record, where it asks for country, and in the 008 field. In both of those places, you're limited just to a 3-letter code. But in this field, you actually spell it out. Now, the name of the publisher appears in subfield B. And if the name of the publisher isn't identified, you would use the same process that you used up here for the place of publication. You can enter it in brackets or say publisher not identified. Oops, sorry, got ahead of myself. Okay, now for the date of publication, the 264 field can be repeated in a single bib, as you see here at the bottom. Now in Minerva, we don't require that in a bib record you give both the publication date and the copyright date if they're the same. You would just use this first 264, second indicator 1 with the publication date. Now, if for some reason, and this is fairly common, the publication date isn't given on the title page or the verso, you can infer it by finding the copyright date and putting that here at the end of the field in brackets. Now, if you have an item where you've got two varying, pretty different dates, this example here at the bottom would be an item possibly that was originally published, copyrighted in 1964, but Scribner has issued a new edition of this item that was published in the year 2000. Because you've got those two varying dates, you would have the two 264 fields. And this would also be a case when you were up in the 008 field and you were entering the dates. You would use T instead of S for date type, and then you would give both dates. And we can go back and look at that again when we're finished. Now, if you have no idea when something was published, you can enter it like here. Say you know it was published in the 2000s. You could put in 2 and then 00, or excuse me, 2 and then 3 question marks. So that indicates that you have been able to narrow it down, but you can't find out for certain. Okay, and then again, entering this field, pay attention to your spacing and your punctuation, etc. Okay, moving on. Physical description, another very important element of the bib record. It's funny, if you go back and you look at your libraries, maybe your oldest bib records from when you were first loaded into a computerized system, or when you were first entered into Minerva or MILS, you may find some pretty skimpy records in your catalog that are lacking important fields, and frequently the 300 field would be one of those things that's missing. But when you're creating a new record, theoretically, you're going to have that item that you're cataloging right in front of you. You can examine it physically. There should be no reason why you shouldn't be able to provide all this information in the field itself. So there are several fields that we use for physical description. The first one would be the 300. This is for descriptive details about the material being cataloged. This field does not use indicators. The details include the extent or the pagination, the presence of illustrations and other accompanying material, and also a measurement of the size in centimeters. So for print items, the number of pages is given in the first field of the 300. To determine the number of pages, you would go from, of course, the first page, the first numbered page, to the last numbered page. Very often, the book you have in your hand, the pagination may stop at, say, page 298, but then there's several pages beyond that. You don't manually count those and add them. You just use the last numbered page. Let's see. Now, if your book has information in the very beginning, such as a preface or some other kind of introduction, check and see if those pages are numbered. And normally those pages would be numbered in Roman numerals. So as we've done here, you enter first the total number of Roman numeral pages and then the numbered pages. Let's see. Take a closer look at your book and see if it has any pages inserted throughout that are not numbered, but they would contain photographs or other kinds of illustrations. Often these pages are on glossy paper. If these pages are only printed on one side, you would count the sheets of paper as leaves of plates. If the pages are printed on both sides, you would count each printed side as one page of plates. So if your book contains these inserted unnumbered pages, you count them up and enter them also at the after the number of other page information, you enter it as so X number of unnumbered pages of plates or unnumbered leaves of plates. Then in addition to that, if the book has illustrations or maps, charts, genealogy, that type of thing, you would then enter that information in the B subfield. And then finally, if you're cataloging a book, you need to measure it with a metric ruler and then enter the number of centimeters in height. If you're cataloging something that, say, is in the form of a disc, whether it's a video disc or a recorded music, instead of centimeters, you're going to enter 4 3/4 inches, which is the diameter of the disc. Now, this example here will frequently be used if you are cataloging a children's picture book. Those books, more often than not, don't have numbered pages. So you would enter the phrase "one volume" in parentheses unpaged, and then color illustrations and so on. For the 300 field in a sound recording, instead of pages, you're looking at a number of discs. You count the number of discs and enter that along with the total length of the playback time. Whoops, sorry. And then some other information about the disc itself. And then again, the size. Ebooks do not have actual pages, even though they may appear to, like if you're reading something on a Kindle, that it does have page numbers, but they're not real pages. So we don't enter that information in the 300. It would just be listed as one online resource. And then finally, if your book has accompanying material, you would also note that in the 300 field. This example might be a children's picture book. The pages are not numbered. It has color illustrations. It's 26 centimeters high, but it also has tipped in the back an audio disc. So you would note that with a plus sign and then subfield E, and then enter that information. Sorry, I keep changing that slide. Again, your spacing and punctuation is important. And one other really finicky detail, and I can't tell you why this is the case, but this is an RDA rule. If your record has a series statement in it, which we haven't even discussed yet, you're going to end the C subfield with no punctuation. Hope I'm not making you dizzy. This is an exception here because this is an abbreviation. We put a period after IN for inches. Now, if your book does have a series statement, then you could put a period at the end of this phrase. Also, another note, if you're cataloging a large print book, you don't put the phrase large print in the 300 field, nor would you put in the phrase board book. That information is entered elsewhere. Now, in the guide that you're going to be able to get after this is all over with, I have included a link to a document that gives examples of physical description fields, especially for non-print materials, and that will be in the document you get at the end. And that will give you a lot more information and examples on how to construct this field. Okay, now, ever since RDA came to play, there are some new fields that are required in any bib record. And these fields are give information regarding these three categories, which are content, media, and carrier. Again, the packet that you will receive has a better display and better examples of how these fields are put together. So I wouldn't try and, really memorize what you're seeing right here. But just to work through it a little bit, a print book, an ebook, a manuscript that's handwritten and so forth, the content is text. The media is unmediated because it means it's just you in the book. You don't need any kind of device to access the information. And then the carrier is a volume. Now, maybe you're cataloging a map. For a single map, your 336 would be a cartographic image. That is the content. The media is unmediated. And the carrier is a sheet. It's a sheet of paper. Now, if you're cataloging instead of a single map, you're cataloging a book of maps, your carrier field is going to be volume as opposed to sheet. Cataloging an audio recording. You have several options. You may have an audiobook that is someone reading a book out loud. That would be spoken word. Or it may be a music CD. Your content is performed music. Or maybe it's a recording of just ambient noises, bird songs or breaking waves, that kind of thing. Then the content is sounds. And an audio recording can come to you basically in one of two media. Either it would be an audio recording, or it may be accessed via computer. And then finally, for audio recordings, your carrier would be could be an audio disc that you put in a player, or it would be something, again, that you access online. And in that case, it would be an online resource. Now, these fields don't appear, they don't display in the OPAC. So this is something that we do for our own use internally. And I think it's preparing the system for future developments where there's more ways that these fields can be employed in searches and lists and so forth. Video recordings. In general, video recordings content would be two-dimensional moving image. The media would be either via video or by computer. Of course, maybe you have film or some other type of media. There are other terms to use if that's the case. And then the carrier would be, it's a video disc, or it's an online resource, or it may be something else beyond that. Now, if you're working on an item that a print book that includes significant illustrations, you're going to include a second 336 field. This would be like if you were working on a picture book, or a cookbook, a craft book, something that has lots of illustrations that would be considered to be important. You're going to add a second 336 field with the phrase still image. And if you're cataloging a large print, you would add a different field, a 340, and note that large print. The subfield in there, RDA FS, that would mean RDA font size. Okay, and then again, the packet you will receive has much greater detail on how to use these fields, and I can show you that at the end. Okay, series statements. We have many series in our catalogs. They're very popular. A series statement should be entered in the record if it's present on the resource. And this information goes into the 490 field. Now, a lot of times in an existing record, you may see a 490 with the second indicator, or excuse me, with the first indicator 0. And that means that that particular statement is not going to be indexed in the catalog. So there may be some publisher issues a lot of murder mysteries, and they may have a very loose category called prime crime mysteries. It's not really a series. But if you felt it was important, you would enter it as a 490 first indicator 0. However, I don't see the point even of bothering with something like that. If you have a series statement, use the 490 first indicator 1. And I just got ahead of myself. I just wanted to read the definition of a series. A series is defined as a group of separate items related to one another by the fact that each item bears, in addition to the title proper, a collective title applying to the group as a whole. Publishers issue works in series to group together publications on a particular topic and for distribution and sales purposes. Series provide points of access in the catalog. A user may only know that a publication is issued in a particular series, or may be seeking all of the publications in a particular series without knowing any of the individual titles. So if that is the case, by including a series statement in your record, the patron can search under that term and find all the individual volumes in the catalog. Let's see. Now, when you're entering a series statement in the record, you would transcribe it exactly as it appears in the book or on the book. And if it happens that a volume number has been assigned to that book, you would include that in the series statement as well. Important to know, when you put a 490 field in the bib record, you are going to be required further down in the record to include an 800 or 8XX field which will give the authorized form of the series title. And we will discuss that coming up. Okay, notes fields are quite useful. You don't use, obviously, all of the different possibilities for a note in a bib record, but if there are details that you think belong in the record that can't be entered in any of the other fields, you would use a note. And be aware that information that is not specific to a particular, no, excuse me, information that is specific to a particular library's holding should never be entered in a bib record note. I know that when I'm using the remote databases, it's very common, like a record that originated with one of the URSIS libraries, there may be a 5XX note that says donated in memory of so-and-so, or something like that. That's okay if you're an URSIS library, I guess, but we are not in Minerva or MILS, and so that information would belong in your item record, not in the bib record. Okay. Some of the more commonly used notes would be 546 for language information. A 500, say the item in your catalog, it was for some reason difficult to identify the title. You would say for 500, you would say title from spine label, or title from price tag, or something like that. A 521 note is for the target audience. This is where you'll often see reading level information. A 520 is for summary. A 500 note, again, is where you would say if an item includes an index. If your book has bibliographical references, and I mean both something that is identified as a bibliography and another section that's called notes, that's all considered bibliographic material. And you would give the beginning and ending pagination in parentheses in that note. If you have a bibliography and an index, you would use a 504 field that says includes bibliographical references with the page numbers and index. A 505 field is used to list contents. For example, some libraries like to put chapter titles in there, or possibly you have, it's a book of short stories and you want to note the titles of the short stories, etc. The 505 is where you would put that information. 511 is a very brief note that will tell you, if it's a sound recording, who the narrator is. Or if you're doing a video recording, maybe you want to list, say, the top 3 or 4 lead actors in that space. A 538 field is used for media requirements. And a 505 field, going back to the 505, as I said, you would use this if you want to include a list of the book's contents. I don't know if I have an example here. Yes. Okay, so this example is from a bib record for something titled Tales and Sketches by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So in other words, it's a It's a collection of work by a single author. You can enter the titles of all or just some of the stories inside that volume in a contents note. You'll want to look at record examples to understand what the way that field is set up with spacing and punctuation. But this gives you title access to those short stories. So if you wanted to find a copy of Twice Told Tales in the catalog by using this contents note, you would be able to find it in a title search. Whoops, where am I? Okay, and just a few words about the 520 summary notes. This is sort of a pet peeve of mine, and I know I'm not the only one. I think that too often we're finding summary notes in records that are basically just the entire text of a dust jacket copied word for word into a summary field. And that is really not an appropriate way to create a summary. A summary really, it needs to be, if possible, no more than 50 words. And it has to be a very objective summary of the content. This is not a place where you would note, this is a heartwarming and thrilling tale of a yada, yada, yada. That may be the case according to the publisher who wants to sell the book, but for a library's purpose, that's not what the book is about. And now I've shown you an example of an appropriate summary. As you can see, it's basically one sentence and just tells you sort of what the book is about. Now, this is an example of what I would consider to be an inappropriate summary, where maybe the publisher's description or the Amazon description or the dust jacket has basically written an essay that tells you every single development of the plot and so on and so forth. It's an exquisite world. This is too much. Try not to do it this way. Take an extra few minutes to condense this into something that, again, tells you what the book is about, but it doesn't tell you what happened or how you personally responded to it. A 545 field is something that can be used if you want to include biographical information about the author. In particular, I think in Minerva, we have liked to note if the author of a particular work is a Mainer. I think back in the olden days, some libraries would indicate that by putting in a subject heading that says main author, and then probably gives the author's name. That is not the way it should be done unless the book that you're cataloging is about that author. Instead, if you want to show that the author is from Maine, you would enter it in a 545 note field. The first indicator would be 0, and the second indicator is blank. And then, so you would write main author, and then in a B subfield, you would explain, give a little more detail about that author. Okay, now we come to the subject of subjects. And I think that this may be probably one of the more difficult aspects of creating an original record. The way to approach this is to examine the item in hand and try to determine its main subjects, significant persons or characters that have a relationship to the work, and a basic genre. Now, unfortunately, most Minerva and MILS catalogers don't have access to print or automated online resources for subject headings. So the best approach is to use all of the other resources that are at your disposal. I would consider other items in the catalog that are similar in subject or form. Look and see what headings are used in that record and adapt them for the record I'm working on. There's no limit to the number of subject headings that you can put in a bib record, although I don't advise that you go crazy and go overboard. Use your own judgment and common sense to decide what is necessary and what's excessive. If you cannot find a subject heading, feel free to borrow or steal it from somewhere else. You can determine the cover or the subject by reading the cover and the jacket copy, or a publisher's description online, or from a catalog or from Amazon. You could also try looking at something like Novelist or WorldCat, and see what you can find there for a similar item. You can use the Z39.50 databases or other library systems catalogs. Now, Minerva catalogers, you can search on a term that you think is a heading, and the system would direct you to the correct authorized form. MILS catalogers, because you don't have an authority file, you're going to have to work around this by possibly searching the Minerva OPAC or using one of the other resources that I'm going to describe for you. In Minerva also, excuse me, you can search the InView database that we use when we're verifying authorities. Anybody can go to the Library of Congress Authorities database and look for a heading there. So the 6 XX fields are used for entering subject headings, also known as access points. In Minerva, and I think also in MILS, we use specifically Library of Congress headings or medical subject headings. These headings are verified against our authority record file. You can tell if a heading is from the Library of Congress because the second indicator would be 0. A medical heading is going to have the second indicator 2. We do not use Sears headings. So if you happen to have an old copy of Sears headings in your office, please don't use them. We don't use Sears. We don't use the BISAC headings, that's an acronym for book industry subject and category headings. And we don't use the OCLC so-called fast headings. So don't copy them from another source and use them. You can usually tell something is a book industry heading because part or all of it will be recorded in all capital letters. And the OCLC fast headings usually have that term OCLC fast somewhere in the field. Okay, now in the 6 XX fields, your indicators and subfields are very, very important. Subfields may contain subdivisions that refine the nature of the heading. Now, working with subdivisions, V is a formed subdivision. This describes the nature of the material in hand and is used to indicate fiction, periodicals, juvenile literature, etc. A great source to find formed subdivisions that are allowed is to go to this document I've noted here at the Princeton University Library, and it's a huge list. Very helpful. So in the example is a subject heading, Maine, subfield V, fiction. That just tells you that the work is about Maine and it's a work of fiction. X is a general subdivision, which would be a topical subdivision that narrows the scope of the subject heading. So Maine's X subfield history tells you that it's has some relationship to the history in Maine. The subject heading animals with the subdivision food habits tells you more specifically what the work is about than just the term animals would. Y is a chronological subdivision, which provides a period of time to narrow the subject scope. And Z is a geographical subdivision that represents a place to narrow the subject scope. So if your book was about the bridges of Acadia National Park, it would go in as bridges subfield Z Maine, which is your geographical, and then another Z Acadia. So it really narrows it down to specifically what the book is about. Now, we use the term 6XX because these tags are given in a variety of forms. So if your subject heading is for a personal name, a fictitious character, a legendary figure, a deity such as, like a Hindu god or something like that, mythical characters, you would use a 600 field. Indicators are important. We saw this, I think, when we were talking about authors. Indicator 0 in the first place would be used if your character is identified by a first name or a single name only. Indicator 1 would be for a surname, and 3 is for a family name. And then the second indicator identifies the source of the heading. So 0, as I said before, Library of Congress. 1 would be for LC children's headings. 2 would be for mesh headings. And then 7 is used if there are other sources, which generally that's reserved for genre headings. In the 600 name heading, a subfield C is often used given with titles and other words associated with a name. And then subfield D contains dates associated with a name. So in the first example, Ved Mehta, who died recently, his authorized name heading includes his birth and death dates. And then we have a couple of fictitious characters. And again, that phrase appears in a subfield C. 610 would be used if your subject heading is refers to a corporate body. An example of that would be a an organization such as the United Nations, or a jurisdiction such as the United States. And again, indicator 1 refers to a jurisdiction. Indicator 1, 2 would be if it's not a jurisdiction, but you're giving the name of an organization in direct order. Let's see. Okay, 611 is the tag you would use for what they would consider to be a meeting name. Examples of meetings would be something like Baseball World Series, or a political convention. And then 650 is used for topical entries as opposed to name entries. Again, with the first indicator here would be blank. The second indicator gives the source of the heading. And a 651 is used when the subject is a geographical element. Okay, the 655 is used for a genre term. Now, most original records may be somewhat minimal as compared to a full level OCLC record, but they should at least include one or more genre headings. Genre terms can be used to indicate genre, form, physical characteristics of the material being cataloged. In the past, most genre terms were taken from the thesaurus name known as GSAFD, which was Guidelines on Subject Access to Individual Works of Fiction, Drama, etc. Over recent years, though, the Library of Congress carried out a project of creating a comprehensive new list of new genre terms. These are known as LCGFT, or Library of Congress Genre Form Terms. And these are now the preferred genre terms in Minerva. There are many resources available online for finding appropriate genre terms, including the one I'm showing here, which is a product of the Library of Congress. The way you would enter these in a bib record would be using 655 tag, second indicator 7, and then a subfield 2, which provides the source of that genre term. And if you were entering a GSAFD heading, you would use the same format for entering that information. Okay. Edit entries. 7XX added entries are used for added entries that provide additional access to a bib record from names and or titles having various relationships to a work. Added entries are made for persons, corporate bodies, etc., that have some form of responsibility for the creation of a work or for titles that bear a close relationship to it. As original catalogers in Minerva and MILS, you're most often going to use the 700 added entry field, in which the entry element is a personal name. And again, you can see the indicator 2, it will be blank, but indicator 1 is where you would specify if it's a forename, a surname, or a family name. The names of co-authors, editors, illustrators, translators, cast members, narrators, etc., are entered in 700, and they should be verified against authority control. And as with the 100 fields, 700 fields should also include relator terms entered in subfield E, which you can see. We have the name of a translator, and that is noted in subfield E, or we have the name of an actor in a particular film. In addition, you can use 700 when the contents of a book are a variety of works by an assortment of authors. Added entries are created to give author and title access to those secondary entities. To reuse an example I used previously on how to enter a 100 and a 245 field. This is an example down here of a book that contained a work by the Divine Comedy by Dante, and then it also included 2 works by Geoffrey Chaucer. And as you can see here, we use just the first name to enter in the 100 field, and we entered the title in this fashion. But down here is where we would enter these 2 titles in 700 fields so that these works can also be identified in a title search. If the material you're cataloging is an adaptation of an original work, use a 700 field to enter the reference to the creator of an original work. And for example, there's a movie now titled News of the World that was an adaptation of a book, The News of the World. And so in the bib record for the film, there is no author field. The title is the main entry. And then you give reference to the originator of that work in the 700 field. And the 700 field is actually also the best way to give author and title access to a work that is a collection of works by varying authors. So the volume titled The Best American Mystery Stories 2020 would use a 700 field to provide author and title access to all of the stories included in the collection. So you can see how that works here. Now, back when we were talking about series statements, I mentioned that if you have a 490 indicator 1, you are also required to include in your bib record a series heading. So the 491 records the series name exactly as it appears on the item in hand. The 8XX field gives the name of the series and its author under authority control. Okay, for an example, there's a book titled The Blood Card by Ellie Griffiths. And in that book, there is a series statement on the title page that reads as the Magic Men series. However, when I checked the series authority record, it gives the series title as Magic Men Mystery, which is not the same thing exactly. So as a result, in the bib record, we have the 490 that reads the Magic Men series, and then we have the 800 field that reads Griffiths, Ellie, title, Magic Men Mystery. Excuse me. Now you'll notice that this example gives the author's name in the 800 field. And that is because it's considered to be what's known as an author series. In other words, one person is the responsible party for all volumes in that series. Now, there is another category of series that is defined as publisher series, where within the collective series, a variety of different authors have written the books. In a case like this, the series heading for a publisher series is given in an 830 field. And as an example, I've chosen the kids series 39 Clues. That is a publisher series because I think each volume has a different author. So this is how you would enter that information. And again, you need to observe the correct use of the indicators. Now I know we've just gone over an hour. I'm just going to take you through the rest of this document very quickly, and then we can take a short break and then come back for questions. Okay. So I've included this illustration in the packet because I love what it's doing. This came from the Bodleian Library website. And on the left side of the page, they've reproduced a title page. And then on the right side, they've reproduced a verso. And it has a separate circle for each element of those two pages, and then tells you where in a bib record and in what field you would enter that information. So here you can see the title proper is The Gargoyles of Gloucester. Secondary title information, A Tour by Peter Q. Pediment is the statement of responsibility. Designation of edition, 3rd edition with new maps. The name of the publisher, the location of the publisher. And then on the verso, we have some more editions information. It gives the date of the 3rd edition, copyright date, physical details, and series statement, and so on and so on. So take a quick study of this if you and compare it to a book that you may be cataloging to see what information belongs where. Oops. What did I do? Okay.
I think you clicked to the end.
Didn't mean to do that. Oh, yes, I did. Bear with me. Okay, so that was the end of the PowerPoint, but I just want to show you what else is included in this packet. Did I just lose it again? Yes.
I think you're on the handout.
Yeah. Sorry. I just sort of backed myself out of Zoom. Just bear with me.
You want me to pop it up, Ellen?
Yeah, would you? Okay. Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
So are you in the PowerPoint or the Word?
I'm in the PowerPoint. Which one do you want?
We want to go to the Word document, because that was the last page of.
Excuse my messy desktop. Is it the last page?
No, but it's pretty far down there. Oh, okay. It's after that diagram.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So now this is the page that's in the packet, and it gives you all the links, and I've tested all the links, they're all current, to the many, many, but not all resources that are available to you if you are trying to understand the process of cataloging or original cataloging. There's links to the documents that are already posted on the Minerva website. MARC format documentation is the Library of Congress website, as well as OCLC, that gives you really detailed information about MARC fields. If you're trying to select an appropriate relator term or relationship designator, there is a link to the Library of Congress extensive list of relator terms. You can see that there are websites that are devoted to cataloging specific material types. Let's see if you can scroll down, Lynn. Subject headings. This is a PDF file of all of the current Library of Congress subject headings. We used to be able to get these in the form of a multi-volume print set, but those are no longer available. There is a site that provides all of the officially allowed subject subdivisions, form subdivisions, genre headings. There's a couple of spaces that give more detailed information on the punctuation and spacing of various MARC fields. There's a link to the Library of Congress Authority database, and then other useful places to go. Now on the next page, I'm not sure exactly how many of these I created, but these are worksheets that I set up that would be really helpful if you're going to sit down and try to create an original record. You might want to print out one of these worksheets and fill it out. And in doing this, you're going to identify all the various elements that are going to be important for you to enter in a bib record. So we have one here for print material. And then the next one I think is, yes, audiobook, followed by video recordings, and then e-audiobooks, e-books, recorded music, periodical worksheet. Okay, there's that. And I may be able to provide in the future more specific worksheets for different types of material, but that's where we're at for now. Then this is a great resource, as I mentioned when we were talking about the content, media, and carrier fields. This really breaks it down to the ground as far as what 336, 337, and 338 fields you would use based on the type of material that you're cataloging. So this document is about, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages long. And then that's it. There you have it.
11:20 on my end. We've got a bunch of questions for you, Alan.
Oh, goody.
So,
okay.
So one of the things I just want to mention to everybody who's on, I know not everybody can stay past 11:30, but I did double check and the recording has been restarted. So if you have to leave to go do whatever you need to go do, feel free. Don't worry about it. When we send out the edited recording and the presentation slides and the documentation, will have that for you, so you won't miss out on the questions either. And we've taken everything from the chat, and we'll ask Ellen those things. So, but The first one, Ellen, is in regards to last week. It is the 008 and the 020 are required, but what other fields are required prior to the author and title?
Okay. Well, what I've done in this training is I've tried to only deal with the fields that are necessary to an original record. Okay. So basically everything that we've talked about thus far is required. So just briefly scanning through from the beginning, that would mean the fixed fields completely entered fully are required. The MARC leader is required. Bear with me. The control fields, 006, if applicable, 007, if applicable, 008 in every record. A Library of Congress number, if there is one. An ISBN number is required if it does exist. Other publication numbers, depending on what your material type is. The main entry, in other words, the responsible party. And then the title. Those are all things that we talked about last week. And when you get a printed copy of this guide, it'll all be there. So I don't really think we need to go into that in any more depth right now.
So this one's in regards to the 250 line. I believe they're just asking if another example of an edition statement would be book club edition.
That would be allowed, yes.
Okay. And then in regards to the 264, printing or reprinting date should not be used, correct?
Yeah, that's not relevant.
Okay. And another one in regards to the 264, can you review where to find acceptable abbreviations for locations, such as knowing that Maine is ME period, not capital ME?
Well, pardon me while I disappear for a moment. I have a resource that I depend on, and it is an older book that would, I guess, be considered out of date, but I really don't think it is. And it is this, well, you're going to see it backwards, but it's.
No, it shows correctly on our end. It shows backwards on your end.
Okay, so it's cataloging with AACR2 and MARC 21, and it's a really great resource, even though we've moved ahead into RDA. But this has a list of allowed abbreviations. Just about any other cataloging instruction manual will have that information. You can Google it. I don't think it's going to make or break the system if you have a capital M lowercase e, or you use the Postal Service abbreviation ME. I think either is acceptable. Okay.
So in regards to the 300 field, if the plates have photographs, should you put that info in the subfield B, or is the plates enough?
It doesn't hurt to put illustrations in the subfield B.
Okay. And then the 33X, what should we do if we copy a record and the RDA fields are being displayed? That's probably more of a system. And
Well, I guess I'm not sure what that means. They're not going to be displayed in the OPAC. They will be displayed in Sierra when you're working on the bib record. If you've copied a record and the 336, et cetera, are part of that, I would keep them if they relate to the item you're cataloging. If they don't relate, then you would remove them and then add in the ones that do.
And if for some reason you are seeing them in the catalog, let us know via a ticket and we can take care of that. It shouldn't, and I don't think I've seen it, but
I haven't either.
yeah,
So.
but let us know. That's something that we can.
But it could be showing in other people's catalogs. So if you were looking at someone else's catalog and looking at either their mark in their catalog or looking at their catalog display, you could see it in other people's catalogs because that would be their choice.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So the next one is there a single RDA book that supersedes the AACR2 by Gorman, such as Maxwell's Handbook for RDA, and they provide a URL? But do you have a resource?
Pardon me while I disappear again.
I take it having lots of resources is good to have on hand when you're cataloging.
Well, I have a couple. This is Maxwell's. It's excellent. However, it is the first edition. And as you know, the RDA, let's see, this was copyright 2013. There is a new version of RDA coming out very soon. And there is a new edition of this book being published later this year. So I also just recently got this. This is a new edition. Introducing RDA, a guide to the basics after 3R. This is the second edition. I think that your best source would be to, you have to buy these books. They're not available online. And your best bet would be to go to the ALA bookstore, and you'll find everything there along with when it's being released. So I wouldn't buy anything yet. I'd wait for the new guides to the revised RDA are actually published, which I think will be happening not before summertime. So.
And I'll mention that while it's not an in-house resource, the Maine State Library does purchase professional development books.
Yes.
And if you've got something that's being original catalog, it's probably not imperative that it gets out tomorrow. So you could see if the Maine State Library has it. If not, request that they get it for the professional development collection. And then you can request it as you need it and then return it. So save on your budget.
Right. But if you can make your budget work, I really believe that if your library expects you to be creating these original records, they need to provide you with the means to do it. And that includes, you know, okay, a small but reliable library science collection. I mean, I just think it's like trying to fly a plane without a manual, for lack of a better example.
Right.
I mean, and I cannot tell you how helpful that cataloging with AACR2 book has been for me. It's like everything you need to know about the MARC record is there.
Right. Okay. This one's about the 490. What about the first book or even second in a series? They may not have been identified as a series when they were first published.
Well, if that is the case, you most likely did not put that information in those bib records. But that doesn't mean you cannot go back at a later date and add it in. Now, for example, I don't know if I have one here. No, I don't. But say you get the the second or third book in what turns out to be a series by a particular author. At the time you got the first book, it wasn't evident that it was going to be a series, but at that point you can go back into the record and put in a 490 field. I would put the name of the series statement in brackets, but go ahead and do that and make sure you back it up with the 800 series heading as well.
So just to clarify, Ellen, because this has been something that's been confusing since forever, the 490 generally would reflect whatever's on the book, but you could put it in brackets if it's you're filling in information that's not. The 8 whatever is a controlled vocabulary version that must be always the same.
It won't always be the same.
No, sorry, not as the 490, but as every other in the series. It will tie the series together.
Yes, I gotcha. Yeah.
Across
Yeah,
the
it's
series,
funny.
the 800 one is tying them together. The 490
is what you see. Is what you see in each book. And it's surprising how that can be different from book to book. But the 800 is, as I said, it's like an authorized heading. So it will be the same throughout.
Okay. So the next one's about the 546 notes. On the searching end, how can you search the Mills catalog to pull up items in a specific language?
I don't believe you can.
Yeah, you can so this I can answer for a general portion of them. You can on the advanced keyword search page, but there's only a select few there, and it's pretty much the majority languages that you would find in the catalog. If there is a large collection, say for some reason you have a whole bunch of Swedish films or anything like that, a particular collection, you could submit a ticket to us and we can add that to the advanced keyword search list and you can select it. And I had,
I wanted to add to that, Lynn. The other thing you can do is create a review list. And what you would do is to search, I don't know, like if you wanted a list, if you wanted to find everything in your collection that is in the language Portuguese, okay, you could run a review list looking for all your bibs that have that language code in the fixed field or in the 008. Yep. And that would put it all together in one list.
I will note that in Mills, there are a large number of records that don't have that field filled in because they weren't filled in from when they were brought in from their systems. So they're either blank or they have a UND for undetermined.
Right.
But
if you want to make that list in some way visible on the OPAC, you could make it into a featured list, like what you do with your new books and stuff like that. If you decided that you constantly wanted your Portuguese books list, to be there longer term, you could make it into a featured list like the new books or something like that. And then there would at least be a link to all of those results.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the prettiest.
That would be excellent.
So I'm just going to bring up the screen in the OPAC real quick. So when you're in Mills or Minerva, when you're on this main page, if you want to go to the advanced keyword search, it's right here in this drop-down menu. Click the arrow and it brings you here. And then the languages are right down here. These are the ones that are the majority. And you'll notice that Minerva has a few more than Mills. But if there are any collections that you have in Mills that need to be addressed here, we're happy to add those. But that's how you could do a search that way to look specifically for those fields from the bib record. So what was the next question? That was so the 6XX. Is there something on other records that tells us if we are looking at a Sears heading? And the reply from someone in the chat was the second indicator 8 is the Sears subject heading. Yeah. Does that sound about right, Ellen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So And then 6XX, would topical be something like Halloween? So you had mentioned topical.
Topical would be basically anything that is not a personal name. So it's any subject you can think of, whether it's a thing or a place or an idea, what have you.
Okay. And the 800 is the one we see in the OPAC, correct? And I believe, I'm not sure if you addressed that.
I don't think I did. Let me look at something.
I thought it was. I had actually written yes underneath that, but then I started to question myself when we were talking about the 490.
Mhm.
I thought it was the 800 that displayed in the OPAC, not the 490, but now I'm starting to wonder if I'm insane.
Yes, it is. That is the one that you see in the OPAC, is the 800 field.
And it's linked within the OPAC so that you can get the rest of the series. Hopefully.
So the next one is the 710. Do you address information on the 710 field? And I went back and looked at those slides and I didn't see anything specific, but maybe that was in the handout.
Actually, I didn't, and I don't know why. But the 710 works basically like a 610 would, in the sense that it is a a corporate heading, a corporate name, or a jurisdiction, something like that, as opposed to a personal name.
Okay.
And yeah, I didn't discuss that. But what you can do also for a more in-depth explanation would be, let me just, this is the Library of Congress index to all of the documentation on MARC fields. And if you go down here where it's 70X to 750X, click on that, then click on 710. The 710 is for corporate name. And you can see here an explanation. Can you see the page I'm on? Okay. It gives an explanation of all the different uses for the field and how to use, the subfield codes, etc. You can see there are other, there's quite a few different 7XX fields, not just the 700 and the 710. I would go here if you have any questions about what they are and how they're used. It's just not possible to cover all of them, since you actually probably could catalog your whole life and never use all of these options. So, okay.
There's one little, it looks more like it's a note, maybe not a question. It says back to 710 field for videos, etc. So there was, I believe it was the same person. So I'm not sure what she was asking if she's here.
Well, again, I think you would use that if you wanted to refer to the production company that that was responsible for our video, or maybe there was a special effects company that provided services to the film, and you would note it that way.
Okay. Okay. And the final question is, can you provide a worksheet or someone point her, I believe this is her, to a record for a kit that may have multiple books, DVDs, handouts, and physical items?
Well, I didn't do a worksheet for kits because there's just too many variables.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, that is something that I could work on, certainly. And I will take that suggestion, but let me just go somewhere else and show you what we do have available. Okay. So this is where you would go for Minerva cataloging procedures, documents, etc. And Mills libraries are more than welcome to use these resources as well. But we do have a document that addresses what is a kit, how do you identify it, how do you list the components, etc. So you can find this here on the Minerva webpage. I would also go to this RDA document, and I think we address kits here too. Let me just see if I can find it. No, maybe not. Okay, scratch that. There's no help here. But I go back to that other document I just showed you. That would be a good guide to work with. And I'll see if I can't come up with some kind of worksheet for kits.
So to tag along on that, is it possible to see a record for a kit?
Well, yeah, I guess I mean, there's so many in the catalog.
So maybe the suggestion would be to go into the Minerva catalog if you want to see one done there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure how many in Mills have done kits, but I know Minerva does it quite frequently, but
well, if somebody could give me the title of a kit or some kind of name for a kit, I could probably find one that would be a good example.
there's those early literacy kits, story time kits. There's like, I just type in kit in Minerva and I get a slew right off the bat.
Okay. Oh, look, I'm in Mills. Let's go to Minerva. Stop share. Sorry, bear with me.
If you don't have it open, I do.
Okay, let's go to you then, Lynn.
I'm just going to pop it up here and share screen and screen one, share. So, you want me to just pick? Here, astronomy backpack or Alzheimer's. This one says kit. So we'll go with the one that actually has the right material type.
Okay, that the only thing that I would say about this record in particular is that no, I guess it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Okay. So here's an example if you want to look it up in the Minerva catalog. If you just look up Alzheimer's and your family backpack, you'll see the MARC record. Even if you're a Mills library, you can go into the catalog and select MARC display to see this record. And you'll see the fields and subfields used. So there. Yeah. All right. So so there was one other question for, oh, actually, okay, so we're getting thank yous now. For items with parallel translations, do you choose the original language for the language fix field?
Well, okay. I'm not sure what we're talking about here. If we're talking about a book that has been translated from its original language into English, English would be the language in the fixed field.
They probably mean the ones where it's like one thing on this page and then the equivalent on this page, like Beowulf or something.
Well, then I would pick the original language, since that would seem to be a point of interest. If you have a video that, say, is in French, but it has English subtitles, I would choose French as the language that you would put in the fixed field. I hope that answers the question, Cindy.
All right, I think what I'm seeing is just thank yous. So I think if there aren't any other questions, that we're all done, but if you have one, let us know.
Do we need a follow-up? Do people feel like there needs to be a follow-up, or are you happy to carry on for now? We can schedule something in the future.
Yeah, once we get the handout and the presentation and the recording into their inboxes, they can check that out, and then they'll probably be able to determine if they need more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
That's all I've got.
All right. Take
Have a
care.
good weekend.
You too.